10 out of 10, hot damn, this is a good film. Top Gun is a film from the 80s that is both iconic and surprisingly gay. It was also a film that I had not seen until recently. I'll be honest, I had no intention of seeing Top Gun Maverick, despite the good reviews. Due to the fact that the original was nowhere to be found on streaming services, I decided that it was best to give this film a miss. Fortunately, my parents found the DVD in HMV or something, and it was really cheap, so they bought it and we watched it together. Now let me be real with you guys, I think Top Gun kind of sucks. I mean, it's not a bad film, but it is very much aged, and I personally don't think in a good way. The action scenes in that film are incoherent and muddled, the romance between Maverick and Charlie is underdeveloped, and at times a little creepy.
Maverick, what are you doing? Maverick? No, Maverick? Oh, Maverick.
And the vast majority of the characters in that film are very forgettable. To reiterate, the film is not bad. The music is without a doubt amazing and has given the film a great legacy on its own, and I think the characters of Maverick, Goose and Iceman are all interesting enough. Even if at times I feel like Tom Cruise might have been slightly overacting.
I don't like you because you're dangerous.
That's right. Ice, man. I am dangerous.
It is a solid film with a very solid and enjoyable ending, and whilst predictable, I was satisfied with Maverick's journey throughout the film, as he was both able to teach both his superiors and fellows a few things, but he would also be knocked down a peg or two for his rash, egotistical personality. I'm also glad I watched the film the day before I watched Top Gun Maverick, because it is honestly quite astonishing how easily Tom Cruise slides back into the role of Maverick after all these years. He's still a reckless, slightly cocky man who often butts heads with his superiors and peers, yet he's very much a team player. He's still the Maverick you know and love from Top Gun, whilst maintaining the personal growth he went through over the course of that film. This Maverick will do anything he can to get his pilots safely home. So anyway, the story is essentially that there is a very dangerous mission, and Maverick has been called to Top Gun to teach these young pilots how to successfully accomplish it. However, and I'm assuming that if you're watching this, then you've already seen Top Gun, but in case you haven't, then spoilers for Top Gun, there are some complications when Maverick discovers that one of the pilots he's been told to train is the son of Goose, the co-pilot, or whatever the correct terminology for Goose's role is, and close friend of Maverick who died in the original film. Maverick clearly feels deep regret and guilt over Goose's death throughout the film, and Tom Cruise really sells it. His performance in the original may have been a bit iffy at times, but in Top Gun Maverick, he gives a really emotional performance. However, the real MVP has to be Miles Teller as Rooster, Goose's son. It's very clear that Maverick and Rooster have a long history with each other, and both men are fantastic at capturing both the deep resentment coming from Rooster and the overwhelming fear from Maverick that he's going to lose Rooster, who he clearly views like a son. These two characters are the main crux of this film's story, and it was a joy to watch their journey over the course of this film, and whilst I didn't cry, I definitely got just as emotional as these two characters at the end of the film. I'd also like to praise Val Kilmer for his small but crucial role in this film. Most people know by now that Val Kilmer unfortunately had a battle with cancer that resulted in the loss of his voice, and I personally think that the film was able to navigate this very sensitive issue in a respectable way, and kudos to Val Kilmer for giving a great performance despite this in one of the film's best scenes. Now, a lot of pre-release buzz surrounding this film was about the fact that the actors were actually flying these planes instead of being on a CGI stage or whatever it is that they use for the majority of big screen blockbusters nowadays. Now, admittedly, I'm not someone who minds films being all CGI or heavily reliant on CGI. They definitely age worse than films that did things practically, but overall I enjoy them, and let's be honest, a lot of those films can't be made without CGI. However, there is something about knowing that what you're watching is for the most part real. It's exhilarating watching the actors jerk around and react to the movement of the jet they're flying, and something as simple as seeing the shadow of the jet near the ground as the jet flies by really draws you in. It also makes the action scenes in this film some of the best and most nail-bitingly intense of any film that I have ever seen. One of my complaints about the original was how lackluster the action scenes in that film were by modern standards. This film makes up for that and then some. There are so many moments throughout the film, but especially in the final act, where it feels like any character could die at any moment, including Maverick. Speaking of the final act, holy moly does this film save the best till last. After spending the first 2/3 of this film taking its time and developing the characters, the film, for the final third, decides to put its foot on the gas pedal and refuses to take it off. The excitement and nervousness you feel whilst watching this act is something I've not experienced often whilst watching a film. The closest a film from this year has got me to feel like that is probably The Batman in its final action sequence, but honestly, as good as that sequence and the rest of that film is, it has nothing on Top Gun Maverick, which I'm now realising is my favourite film from this year. Before anyone says anything, I am aware that there are probably better films that came out this year. I know people praise The Northman, and there's probably some hidden masterpiece that no one talks about, or some foreign film that I've not heard of, but I'm not a cinephile, and based on the films I've seen this year, both films are actually released this year, and all classics that I've watched for the first time, Top Gun Maverick is my favourite film that I've watched this year. Yes, perhaps the film is at times a little predictable, and perhaps the relationship between Maverick and Penny can feel a little pointless and distracting in the grand scheme of things, but this is a film that I recommend to everyone, regardless of whether you've seen the original or not, although you probably should, just so you are caught up on the Top Gun lore. And also, just because the film is predictable, that doesn't mean that's a bad thing, because it shows that the film set things up properly and that you as an audience member were able to follow it correctly. This film is exceptional. However, due to a distinct lack of homoerotic content in the sequel, I can only give this film a 0 out of 10. Very disappointing.